the next thing we're going to have you each do is you're going to read to us some of your work. And I'm so excited to have you do this. But before we get to that, why don't you tell us real quickly what it is you're going to read to us? Would you like to start, Dara?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to read the opening in my book. It's called The Indie Author Revolution.
Okay.
And it just is a little bit of a look into my background as an undergrad in English. And I wanted to work for Random House like most English majors want to if they want to go into publishing. And so it just is a little snippet about sort of my evolution from an English major to now working only with indie authors, helping them mentor them through the writing process.
Great. How about you, Betty?
I'm going to read one of my recent columns from the Chanhassen Villager.
Okay.
And where it came from was that 2 weeks ago I did a breakout session at a Toastmasters fall conference up in Brainerd.
Okay.
And then I wrote my column based on that. And it has to do with finding your calling.
Okay, great. And Julia?
And I will be reading a brief passage from my new novel, Widow Woman, wherein Audrey makes a very key discovery about her mother, and it kind of is what sets the rest of the book in motion, so it's a very key passage in the book.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being with us, and we will look forward to hearing your readings coming up next.
This is a column of mine that was published recently in the Chanhassen Villager. It's entitled, Find Your Voice and Use It. I found my voice. Now what do I do? That was the subject of a session I presented at the Toastmasters District 6 Fall Conference last Saturday, and it's a question I spent a long time trying to answer for myself. When I first joined Toastmasters, one of the reasons was that I felt I could express myself fairly well in print, but not when I was speaking out loud. I didn't have any noble or global ambitions at the time. I just wanted to be able to speak up at meetings and have people listen and understand what I was trying to say. I wanted to be able to share information that I had and others needed. I wanted to be able to leave a message on someone's voicemail without rambling. Even though I didn't have any grand or worldly intentions at the beginning, it was through Toastmasters that I gained courage, confidence, and the convictions that eventually led me to Uganda and to the work I'm now doing there that really will have global implications, and to my passion for helping people everywhere to find and benefit from the gifts, skills, and talents they don't even realize they have. One of the things I shared with the participants in my session at the conference was that finding your voice, both the ability and the desire to speak out, can be a first step on the way to finding your calling, which I would describe as whatever it is that beckons you, that motivates you, that challenges you, and perhaps even scares you to death. That may sound daunting or like way too much work, but your calling is also what will give you your greatest sense of accomplishment, your strongest sense of satisfaction, and your deepest sense of fulfillment. It's not always easy to find your calling or even to recognize it once you do, but it's still worth your time and effort to look and to continue looking for it. Not until you find it, but until it finds you. When I first realized, after several years in Toastmasters, that I wanted to become a professional speaker, I started to dream of speaking to full houses in large venues around the country and the world, in cities like New York, Chicago, London, LA. Never once during that time did Uganda cross my mind. Never once did I imagine how much I would be drawn to the country or how welcome and at home I would feel once I was there. And never once did I consider how deep my concern would grow for young prostitutes in a slum outside of the capital city, or how fierce and focused my determination would become to help them build a better life for themselves and their children. I can't explain how or why all of this happened, but I know that it's part of my calling, and it's one of the ways I meant to use my voice. Using your voice, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean being a professional speaker, or even being a speaker at all. It can mean being a teacher, a mentor, a writer, a friend. It can mean being a counselor, an advocate, an advisor, or it can mean being silent and simply listening when someone is in doubt or in pain. Sometimes we speak the loudest and most powerfully when we say nothing at all. If you're still in the process of finding your voice, I hope you'll enjoy whatever it is you discover. I also hope you will continue on from there, exploring and learning what you're meant to do with your voice. And I hope, most of all, that you will realize, with joy and perhaps amazement, that yours is the voice the world is waiting to hear. Thank you.
And I'm going to read my preface of the book I've just published, The Indie Author Revolution. In 1998, I dreamed, as many undergraduate English majors do, of a career in publishing. A lofty position working with a New York royalty publisher, relationships with awe-inspiring New York Times best-selling authors, and a charming office where I would spend endless days and nights engrossed in good books. Almost 15 years later, my dream is actually better than what I'd imagined. While the Minneapolis skyline is more subdued than that of New York City, I work with awe-inspiring authors who don't need the New York Times to be best-selling. And I do have that charming office lined with books. Not only are they award-winning, but they're also written by people who have become my dear friends. By taking the road less traveled, I was granted the opportunity to participate in the single most remarkable phenomenon in publishing since the internet. When I get the occasional raised eyebrow from someone about my work, I don't take it personally. A distinguished professor I met a few years ago bit her upper lip and unabashedly frowned as I explained that my career was mentoring indie authors and helping them self-publish. That same professor has since asked for my business card. Times have changed, and what's even more incredible is that readers have changed with the times. We're in the age of the indie author. Books are no longer about the publisher. A book is a good book, no matter the method it came to print. I was once one of those harsh critics of self-publishing. Many authors I work with were once skeptics too. The thing about any phenomenon that shifts an industry and affects a cultural mainstay is that it catches everyone by surprise. In this business, I've learned surprise is good, because once a surprise wears off, curiosity and innovation isn't too far behind. And then comes the best part, the revolution.
And now I'll share with you a passage from my debut novel, Widow Woman. Daniel continued to read aloud from Mom's will. He had not noticed my confusion, but as I turned my attention back to Catherine, I saw that she definitely had. A rosy flush inched its way up her pale neck and into her jawline. She continued averting those unsettling pale blue eyes from me, but I knew, suddenly felt certain, that she was hiding from me. What was going on? The worn leather of my chair creaked under my grip as I squirmed around and tried to refocus on Daniel reading from the paperwork. And of course, any of Joan's personal belongings, you two will have to work together to sort those out, with the exception of the following specific bequests. Joan's car goes to Catherine. Joan's wedding ring from Audrey's father is in your safe deposit box. He looked at Catherine, who nodded and held up a small key she pulled from her wallet, laying it precisely on the desk. My cheeks were burning as Daniel turned to me. Audrey, Joan specifically wanted you to have the wedding ring and a pearl necklace. And there is a pocket watch as well. I understand it belonged to your grandfather. Joan said she wanted that to go to your dad, Hank, and she left a personal letter for him too. He should contact me about those items if you'd just give him my card. I tried to contact him, but he didn't return my calls. Daniel set the papers on his desk, plucked off his glasses, and folded his hands in front of him. That looks to be it for the specific bequests. Do either of you have any questions or concerns? I drew myself up. You say she updated this will when? I asked, my voice an octave higher than usual. Catherine's flowery scent wafted under my nose as she shifted in her chair. She did not smell like Mom today. Daniel consulted the paper. This is dated November 1961. I nodded mechanically, searching my memory for answers. Why did that date strike me as familiar? I couldn't grasp it. Did you have a question about the date, Audrey? Daniel was already shuffling through the papers, but at least he had finally registered my confusion. Yes, in fact, I have several questions. May I please look at that? As Daniel handed me the file, a second envelope slipped out. Oh, that's right. Forgive me, Audrey. Joan left you a personal letter, too. I wondered with a sick feeling just how deeply personal that letter might turn out to be, while still fighting to maintain the plausibility of any other explanation. Why hadn't Mom told me any of this before? I'd never thought I'd become an heiress or anything, but Catherine inheriting such a large portion of Mom's estate bewildered me. While I scanned the file, Daniel stretched over his desk and clasped Catherine's hand between his. I noted that Daniel had not reached for my hand, but Catherine's. Catherine, I'm sorry for your loss, Daniel said. The plain gold band on her finger caught the wan sunlight struggling through the window. He turned to me. And you, Audrey. I'm sorry for your loss, too. Sorry for Catherine's loss? I still didn't understand. They'd been best friends, but I was her daughter. I was her family. A thought, insidious and perverse, began to worm its way up from the bottom of my brain. Had they been, what word could I even use? Lovers? No. I rejected it immediately, laughing at myself for having such a patently ludicrous thought. I mean, I'd heard of the Daughters of Bilitis and the Mattachine Society, but thinking of my mother and Catherine as card-carrying members brought a nervous laugh to my throat. But as I glanced over at Catherine, the laughter died on my lips, snuffed out by the sight of her grief, so raw, so intense, and of Daniel, reaching tenderly across his desk to comfort her as though she were a grieving widow. A grieving widow. And at that instant, I knew only one thing for certain. I was not the chief mourner here.